should Britain bring back national service to bolster our armed forces? 0207862 2222. That's the number to give us a call on this. British over 18s will be offered a taste of military life with a gap year scheme in the Army, Navy and RAF under government plans to get the country prepared for war. School kids will also be taught about the work of the armed forces in an attempt to improve recruitment. But national service, full-on conscription, has so far been ruled out, despite the Prime Minister saying that defending the country is the responsibility of every citizen.
Part of society. Every citizen of this country has a role to play, because we have to recognise that things have changed. In the world of today, the front line, if you like, is here. The threat we now face is more serious, more immediate and more unpredictable than at any time since the Cold War.
But at the same time, Tessa, the nature of warfare, as you'll know better than anybody probably in this room, has changed so dramatically since 1960. That boots on the ground, especially untrained young boots on the ground. Does that make any sense at all?
No, I feel that this is almost a sort of Luddite approach to talk about national service, which incidentally we finally got rid of in 1960. It had been reintroduced in the late 1940s. We had commitments. We were still occupying Germany at that time. We had massive empire commitments as well. But it was seen as an ineffective way, what was perceived to be a more effective way of defending your freedom in your country was a professional, an elite army with specific skills. And I don't believe that that has changed. What has changed, of course, is the capacity to wage war invisibly, the cyber warfare model. We've seen Russian interference, some of it proved, some of it unproven. We know that there's been a litany of cyber attacks on our everyday consumables. Co-op vulnerable, Marks and Spencer's, the British Library, outages on a size and scale of which we've not seen before. Where's the hand behind those attacks? We see in countries in Europe, I think particularly of Romania, almost definitely Russian interference in their presidential election in December. Now, that requires huge investment, but the idea of it being boots on the ground investment, I'm equivocal about that. Yes, we need effective, lightning-fast infantry troops, well-trained, but you don't need huge numbers of them.
I mean, Russ, isn't there a case to say that, you know, national service of this type is just going to be a huge burden on the armed forces who have a specific job to do, some of it highly technical, and suddenly you're taking on 18-year-olds who maybe have no interest whatsoever in serving their country in that way, and you're saying to the army, right, now you deal with them.
Well, I don't necessarily agree. I mean, I do think there's a very good chance, for example, that there are young people up in their bedrooms on sofas playing computer games who could fly a military drone better than the people who fly them at the moment. I mean, these kids are very, very smart. But to be serious about national service, I think there's a really good case for it now because, and I'm not a warmonger, I'm a peacemonger, by the way. And I think the Prime Minister is right, but of course we're always behind the curve militarily, I'm afraid, in this country. And I think, looking back to when I was 14, 15, 16, you had an option to flirt with the armed forces. I was in the Sea Cadets, there was the Royal Marine Cadets, there was the Air Cadets, and there was the Army Cadets.
They already exist, they still exist.
Yes, but that, for me, was a wonderful military grounding. My father was a Royal Marine, my grandfather was in the Royal Navy, my other grandfather was a pilot in the Royal Flying Corps. I I was interested in the military. OK. I learnt respect.
We're going to have to pick this up after the break, and we're going to have a good chat about it. Don't you worry. Don't go anywhere, because we're going to take your calls too on this after the break. Should Britain bring back national service to bolster our military? And straight on with our discussion about bringing back national service. 0207862 2222 is the number that you need to get in touch. I'm going to show you something before we go any further.
Okay.
It's a picture. This is my dad when he was in the RAF. There he goes, Peter Allwright.
Man.
Some of the happiest days of his life. Yeah. He was a boy from Bracknell that had always loved aeroplanes, but never really had the opportunity to get hands on them. Became a first draft engineer in the RAF, and 18 months, which he describes as freedom, happiness, even though he was made to do all the tough stuff,
Yes.
as they did as part of national service there. But right at the end of his life, he talked about it in glowing terms.
Brilliant.
But that was then, and this is now. He grew up, Russ, with a generation of men that went off to war.
Of
He
course.
was just too young to be part of that. So he understood what sacrifice meant. And I just wonder whether young people now have that context to know what's at stake for them.
I don't think they do, but that isn't to say that they couldn't learn. I mean, national service, I would have done it without hesitation. Many other countries in Europe, it's been part of law and their lifestyle for many, many, many years. I think to be part of the military, to learn the ups and downs of having to abide by rules, to actually feeling as though you've got somewhere to belong, to contributing to society, and ultimately contributing to the security of your country, I think there's a lot to be said than just sort of a lot of young people, loll around, stand on street corners. Many have got so much to offer as well.
I just wonder whether they need to do that with a gun in their hand. That's the thing. Or you can serve your country peaceably without a gun in your hand. I wonder. Anyway, I want to hear what you think. Martin's in North Yorkshire. What do you reckon, Martin? What's your background? And do you think national service is something that everybody needs to experience during their lives?
No, national service should not be put forward for the simple reason. I'm ex-army. I volunteered to go in, by my choice. That was years ago, Now, war has changed, Back in the day, people used to have war and there was uniforms involved, You knew who you were fighting, You met in a field, and you fought it out. Nowadays, it's getting took into towns. Innocent children, innocent women are getting murdered. At the end of the day, that's not what war's about. You know what I mean? Jamaica has a defence course, and they haven't been attacked.
What do you
know
make,
what I mean?
Martin, what do you make about this idea that we need to be on a war footing? That Keir Starmer is saying that the threat is there, whether it's coming from Russia, what we see in Ukraine, whether that is extending across Eastern Europe, and that's what we have to be prepared for. If we are caught napping, do you not think we will live to regret that choice?
Are we really going to get caught napping? What I want to know is, what does Starmer know that he's not telling the rest of the country? He's changed his mind, that he was going to cut budgets, you know what I mean? And now all of a sudden he's trying to put everything into it.
What do you
he's
think's
taking
behind
money
that?
from here, there and everywhere. Would I go to war for Starmer? No.
What do you think's behind it then? Is it about votes? Is it about trying to look warlike, trying to look authoritative? Or is it just providing jobs? If you spend money in defence, you create jobs, you create growth, which is what they're after.
This is how I tell everybody, on my platform. What I tell everybody is, treat everybody how you like to be treated yourself. That is the answer to world peace.
Do you think Vladimir Putin is responsive to that kind of talk?
No.
It's not about President Putin, President Putin's got his argument with Ukraine, right? We're spending millions sending weapons, and back into Ukraine, right? And nothing is developing, If they were going to defend Ukraine, then we shouldn't be, I've got to be careful here, we shouldn't be tiptoeing about. If we're going to back Ukraine, you get over there and back Ukraine from the start.
I've got to say, I agree with
Not stand back
Martin.
and let innocent people...
I agree with Martin.
OK, it does.
Innocent people die, you know what I mean?
OK.
Just because, you're scared of upsetting Putin or you're scared of upsetting the Israelis, you know what I mean? Yes.
Okay.
What happened over in Gaza, when Gaza went over to Israel, I don't condone that. I think that's bad. You with me? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Martin. Listen, we're going to leave you. Thank you for your call.
Yeah.
Tessa, I felt like Martin actually went through 180 degrees there.
Yeah, he did.
To a certain extent. It said, speak peace and love to people, and then if you want to confront Vladimir Putin, you have to be boots on the ground in Ukraine.
But the truth is, and what I think Martin is finding uncomfortable to watch, and I certainly find it uncomfortable to watch, is effectively writ large, the Western world is saying Ukrainian lives are worth less than any other life west of their border. We'll let them bleed on their front line, hundreds of thousands of predominantly young men and some women dying using some of our arms we sometimes give them with equivocal messaging. And actually, that's not brinkmanship. Brinkmanship is meeting a bully with the exact same tactics and manoeuvres and slogging it out with him. And Putin knows that from the equivocal, lily-livered West, he ain't going to get that. Okay. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a damp squid peace, and that will give Russia 2 years to rearm, retreat behind its borders, already on a war footing, and then punch back through of a place of its choice. Maybe Estonia, maybe Lithuania, definitely Ukraine.
I mean,
that's the reality.
To our subject, which is construction.
But I know, but it's all tied in.
National
it's all
service
tied
and
in.
having the numbers, which currently it's not felt we do have.
We don't.
To actually pose that kind of threat and deterrent. To,
if we had the numbers, would we put them in Ukraine?
We've
wouldn't.
got loads of calls coming in, Russ. I want to take a few more.
Okay.
Larry's in Bristol. Larry, do you think national service could be the answer to some of the scary geopolitical situations that we see going on?
Good morning, Mr. Allright, and your panel.
Good morning.
I am all in favour of national service. However, how on earth would we pay for it? It's unfortunate, but it would do society that the younger generation would have some form of discipline in their lives, and that would help us all. We've got prisons overcrowded. Why do we not make a suggestion to government that they look at every individual who gets less than 5 years? Why don't we give them national service instead of sending them to prison?
How easy do you think it's going to be? Are those the people that we really want in our armed forces, by the way? Like, your choice is either go to prison for a crime or you serve your country.
That's the Russian model.
Is that a way to select people to go to the front line? Because I'm not. That does feel a little bit Vladimir Putin, or even a bit Stalin, to be honest, Larry.
Well, it might be slightly a bit more of a deterrent. You've got all these kids carrying knives.
Yeah,
Tell them they're not going to go to prison, because they'll get a slap on the back, and they'll be a hero to their friends because they've done a little bit of prison time.
I mean, Russ, Larry's point about how do you actually persuade young people to do national service? If you go to conscription where they are forced to do it, how many of them will now turn around and say, I'm sorry, but my human rights dictate I don't have to do this?
Well, if we're not in the ECHR, it won't matter, I suppose. But you can always have a conscientious objector. But the serious point is that Larry, has said he's in agreement for the reasons that he has for national service. And, it's been asked, how are we going to pay for it? Well, the small amount increase on defence spending, in reality, and all the former top brass are saying it now, it's too little, too late. If you increase defence spending at the expense of other things, or ask the British public to pay more tax for defence of their lifestyles and their families' lifestyles, that is where you can take some money out for national service and get all the benefits as a country that we would. So it's increased the budget. We couldn't
afford the National Citizenship Service, which was a couple of weeks, outside
but
of
this is
summer.
national service is proper, man.
OK, listen, thank you.
It costs.
Thank you,
yes,
guys.
Of course.
Thanks for all of your calls on that.